Welcome, family, to Feast on Torah. Today we're looking at the real truth about Easter and the hidden pagan roots. Family, let me begin with a question. What do rabbits, eggs, and springtime festivals really have to do with the resurrection of our Messiah? Well, in this video, this eye-opening video, we explore the ancient roots of Easter and its surprising connections to the worship of the Babylonian goddess Ishtar. Now, long before the resurrection of the Messiah, pagan cultures celebrated fertility, rebirth, and resurrection through disturbing rituals, including temple prostitution, child sacrifice, and also blood ceremonies. Now, every spring in the West, every church around the world, churches are filled with joyful songs. Children hunt colorful eggs. Families gather to celebrate what the world calls Easter, a holiday set to honor the resurrection of Yahushua. The world called him Jesus Christ. But what if I told you that this celebration has nothing whatsoever to do with the Bible and everything to do with ancient pagan worship? The bunnies, the eggs, the sunrise services, none of it comes from scripture. Yet millions of believers around the world accept it as holy. Why would you do this? Let me repeat. Millions of people around the world are celebrating with bunnies and eggs and sunrise services, and none of that comes anywhere out of the Torah. Yet millions of believers accept it as holy. Holy unto you. Holy unto whom? Why? If you are serious about following truth and not tradition, then keep watching. What you're about to hear may challenge everything you've ever believed about Easter. In this video, we're going to uncover the real origins of Easter, tracing it back to the worship of fertility goddesses like Ishtar and exposing how paganism crept into the Christian tradition. Now, let's just start with a verse in Deuteronomy chapter 12, verses 29 to 32, and I'll be reading from the Amplified Bible. Verse 29, when Yahweh your Elohim cuts off and destroys before you the nations which you are going in to dispossess, and you dispossess them and settle in their land, beware that you are not lured, in other words, ensnared into following them after they have been destroyed before you, and that you do not inquire about their gods, saying, how did these nations serve their gods, so that I may do likewise? Verse 31, you shall not behave this way toward Yahweh your Elohim, for they have done for their gods every repulsive thing which Yah hates. Do you hear that, family? Yah hates it. When we have Easter, he hates it. Not my words. These are the words of the gods that you serve. He hates it. Let me repeat. You shall not behave this way toward Yahweh your Elohim, for they have done for their gods every repulsive thing which Yah hates. For they even burn their sons and their daughters in the fire as sacrifices to their gods. Verse 32, everything I command you You shall be careful to do it. You shall not add to it nor take away from it. And here we are in the times that we're living in. Are we adding to it or are we taking away? The Most High will not accept worship from us, family, if we worship Him in any way we please. We cannot do that. His word states very clearly that he does not want us to serve him in the way the Gentiles nations serve their pagan gods. We are to separate ourselves. We cannot do that, serve him the way the pagan world serve their gods to our Elohim. It is absolutely unacceptable. So it is wise for us all to examine the traditions and customs that we are practicing in our worship of our Elohim and ensure, family, that we are worshiping Him in the way that He had commanded us, not customs and traditions taken from the pagan nations and then repackaged as Christianity. I was in a Christian church and I did all those things. Okay, I did all of it until I know the truth. I discovered the truth, so I stopped. The word Easter is actually a modified English word form of the name Ishtar, an ancient Assyrian and Babylonian goddess. She was a goddess of fertility, war, and also love. And her worship included spring festivals celebrating fertility and renewal of symbolized by eggs and rabbits, both powerful signs of reproduction. Now, in tectonic mythology, this name appears as Ostern, Ostern, and the Phoenicians knew this goddess as Astarte, the consort of Baal, the sun god whose worship is repeatedly, family, repeatedly condemned in the Bible as one of the most detestable forms of pagan idolatry. So long before our Messiah, Yahushua, walked the earth, civilizations were celebrating the spring festivals for gods like Tammuz, Orisis, and Attis, all of whom were believed to have died and resurrected. This false narrative was then recycled long before the true resurrection of our Yahushua, as the world again called him, Jesus. Now, there are many believers today reject the true message and believe that somehow they can offer whatever they want because they feel that they are now under grace. The Christian doctrine, we're now under grace, and their hearts are in the right place, and that is all that it matters. We are under grace, so we can do exactly as we like and give to the God of Abraham any kind of worship we feel like. Some of you will be in for a shock when you stand before Him in Judgment Day and tell him all about Easter celebration. One of these people favorite saying in the church, in the Christian church, well, Yah knows my heart. And by that statement alone, they don't realize that they have just made their own heart takes priority over the word of the Most High. And that is a very, very dangerous place to find yourself. You cannot edit the word of the Most High to suit what you think He wants. We have to do exactly what He has told us to do. Matthew chapter 7, verses 13 to 14. It says, enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and there are many who go in by it. Verse 14, because narrow is the gate and is the way which leads to life, and there are few who find it. Did you hear that? Many of us are under the illusion that we can walk on the wide, wide road and do as we please, and somehow we will enter the kingdom of Yah. And we believe that He is just waiting there with open arms to welcome us. You are under a delusion. The word said, if you say you love me and you don't keep my commandments, you are a liar, and the word of the Most High is not in you. This ministry family is based on the narrow path. So if you're looking for a wide road so you can do as you please, you are in the wrong place. And as we proceed to walk, you will observe all the traditions of men, for example, Valentine's Day, Halloween, Christmas, and yes, this also includes Easter. We see these traditions trying to force their traditions through the narrow gate. And you will not get these traditions and these celebrations. If you follow these, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. I used to celebrate all the heathens' pagan holidays myself because I did not know any better. But once I woke up to the truth and began reading the Bible for myself, I threw away man's tradition and I tried to do my very, very best to follow Yah's feast days and follow everything else He states in His Torah. Why? Because we are set apart people and we should live our lives accordingly. Easter is not on the narrow path, family, not in this lifetime or the next. This lesson is not telling you not to celebrate Yahushua's resurrection, but we celebrate it according to His instruction written in His word, not man-made traditions or pagan gods. The crucifixion and the resurrection happened during the feast of unleavened bread, which is Passover. Our Messiah told the disciple at the Last Supper in Luke chapter 22, verse 15, and it reads, Then He said to them with fervent desire, I have desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. John 13:1 states very clearly, let me repeat that, John 13 verse 1. Now, before the feast of the Passover, when Yeshua knew that his hour had come, that he should depart from this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. As we have just read, Yahushua, our Messiah, was crucified during the time of Passover. It is very important that we all understand this, because if we are truly worshipping the day of His resurrection, then it should align with the time of Passover. The appointed times are laid out clearly in Leviticus chapter 23, verses 4 to 6. And I'll read verse 4. Leviticus chapter 23, verse 4. These are the feast of Yah, holy convocations, which you shall proclaim at their appointed times. Did you hear that? These, there's no mention of anything to be added. These are the feasts of Yah, holy, and they're holy, which means set apart. When you see the word holy, it means set apart from Christmas, set apart from Halloween, set apart from Easter and everything else. Holy convocations which you shall proclaim at their appointed times. Verse 5. On the 14th day of the first month at twilight is Yahweh's Passover. And on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread to Yahweh. 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. And if you read the rest of that, you'll see all the feasts and instructions given very clearly. This is how the Passover was set up by the Most High. It is important, family, to remember that during the ancient days, people did not have calendars in their homes or their place of work that showed them the dates like we have today. The Israelites followed a different calendar than we follow today. The Passover was set up to follow the moon cycle. The first month on the Hebrew calendar is in the month of Nisan. Now, the Council of Nicosia decided that the date of Easter should be on the first Sunday after the first full moon following the spring equinox. So, to simplify on our Gregorian calendar, the Gregorian calendar, we marked March 21st as the first day of spring. The date of Easter was determined by Rome at the Council of Nicosia in 325 AD. And this is what the spring equinox is. The first Sunday that comes on the first full moon that comes after the spring equinox is how Easter was determined. Now, some point to Acts chapter 12, verse 4, where the word Easter appears, and you'll see it in the King James Bible. But that, family, is a mistranslation because the Greek word is used is Pesach, which means Passover. It does not mean Easter. Okay? Every other modern Bible version corrects this. So why do Christians keep the word Easter alive? Could it be tradition? Could it be comfort or just plain ignorance? And in the book of Mark, chapter 7, verse 7, Yahushua said, "They worship me in vain. Their worship is meaningless and worthless, a pretense, teaching the precepts of men as doctrines, giving their traditions equal weight with the scriptures." Did you get that? You're celebrating Easter and thinking it's having the equal, it's matching up to the scriptures. No, it does not, because you are under the teaching and precepts of men's doctrine, and it does not match up to the word of the scriptures. So if our worship is based on human traditions instead of Yah's word, it's in vain, family. We just read that. It's in vain. It is nowhere near. It's not even equal. It does not carry the weight as what the scriptures described how we should celebrate Yah's feast days. Your Easter means nothing. So ask yourself if Easter began as a celebration for pagan gods, and what does that mean for those who follow the Elohim of the Bible? If you are still celebrating Easter but claim that you're following the Most High Yah, how does that work? Why do you believe the things you believe? And why do you do the things that you do? These are questions you need to ask yourselves. Let's look at Ishtar a little bit deeper. Now, Ishtar is the pagan goddess behind Easter. So when you're celebrating your Easter bunnies and your whatever else goes with your Easter, behind the whole thing, the foundation is built on the goddess Ishtar. And the true meaning of the name Easter, many have been taught that it symbolizes the resurrection of Yahushua. As we said, the world calls him Christ. Because for over 1,600 years, the Western world has widely accepted the belief that Yahushua, the world again called him Jesus, that he rose from the dead on a Sunday morning. It is so funny, family, that the church practiced that Yahushua was crucified on Friday, which the world called Good Friday. The thing is, what was so good about our Messiah being crucified in that wicked, evil way that he was killed? The way he was nailed on the tree for us. Well, let me rephrase. He wasn't killed. He gave his life. He gave up his life for us. No man can take his life. He laid it down. But what was so pleasant about it? Pulling out his beard, beating him until he was unrecognizable, that his own father has to turn his face away from his son Tell me what is good about that. We call it Good Friday. What is also funny, the Christian church cannot even count to three. When the Messiah himself said that he will be 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the earth in Matthew 12:40. He says, "For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so the Son of Man will be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." However, this tradition is rooted more in myth than in scripture. In fact, the Apostle Paul cautioned early believers to be aware of man made fables and traditions creeping into the faith. Now, you tell me this, how can you get 3 days and 3 nights from Good Friday to Sunday morning when Christ rose from the dead? How does that add up? The Bible warns us about people who will teach a different doctrine. And even when things don't add up, we still have people following along like sheep. You cannot get 3 days and 3 nights from Friday evening to Sunday morning, family, but yet you could continue to celebrate Easter. Now let's look at 1 Timothy 1, verse 3 to 4. And it reads, "As I urged you when I was on my way to Macedonia, stay at Ephesus so that you may instruct certain individuals not to teach any different doctrines." And here we have it. We have been taught different doctrines. We have been told everything's been finished with. We're now in something new. We can now celebrate Easter because we are under grace. No, we're not. Yes, we are under grace, but we are not, and we should not be celebrating Easter. It is a pagan celebration. Nor to pay attention, verse 4, nor to pay attention to legends, fables, myths, and endless genealogies, which give rise to useless speculation and meaningless arguments, rather than advancing Yah's program of instruction. You see that? Rather than following Yah's instruction, we follow what man made religion, man made doctrine. And he says what? We should be advancing Yah's program of instruction, which is grounded in faith and requires surrendering the entire self to Yah in absolute trust and confidence. Let me repeat, Yah's program of instruction, which is grounded in faith, not man's traditions of celebrating Easter that is rooted in paganism. Now, according to the biblical evidence, the resurrection did not take place on Sunday, challenging a long standing narrative upheld by mainstream Christianity. And the modern day church have a different doctrine, a different God, and refuse to follow the God of the Bible and his instructions. And people are still bowing down to Mary and worshipping her. People are still kissing wooden cross, and the list is absolutely endless. Listening to man-made doctrine. Yet we have been warned. Yahweh gave us clear commandments in Exodus chapter 20, verses 3 to 5. And I'll read, "You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image, any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them, nor serve them, for I, Yahweh your Elohim, am a jealous Elohim, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me." Deuteronomy 12 verses 30 to 32 also warns us, do not inquire about their gods. Don't even ask people. Don't ask. How do these nations serve their gods? I also will do the same. You shall not worship Yahweh your Elohim in that way. You cannot get it any clearer than that. The Most High does not accept mixed worship, family, where his name is attached to traditions rooted in idolatry. Yet today, Easter is wrapped from head to toe in Christianity and filled with ancient Babylonian customs. Yahushua never ever instructed his disciples to honor his resurrection with eggs. No, he didn't. Or with sunrise services or bunny rabbits. Instead, he said in Luke 22, verse 19, "Do this in remembrance of me," referring to Passover. And it says, "And he took bread, gave thanks, and broke it, and gave it to them, saying, This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." No mention of Easter, no mention of bunnies, no mention of Easter bunny eggs, and all the nonsense that we see going on today, and say that we're honoring Christ. The original pagan festival of Easter was a sex orgy family that celebrated the return of life via the fertility of Semiramis, aka Ishtar's conception of Tammuz. And worshippers of the ancient Babylonian religion celebrated the conception, not birth, but conception of Tammuz on the first Sunday after the full moon, that following the spring equinox. And they celebrated it by baking cakes to Ishtar, getting drunk, and engaging in sex. Now, Ishtar, women were required to celebrate the conception of Tammuz by laying down in the temple and having sex with whoever entered. Babies were then sacrificed in the honor of these pagan gods, and their bloods were consumed by the worshippers. And now the priest of Easter would sacrifice infants, human babies, and take the eggs of Easter with Ishtar as a symbol of fertility and dye them in the blood of the sacrificed infants. And every year, for the first Sunday of the first full moon after the spring equinox, a celebration was made. And it was Ishtar Sunday, it was called. It was celebrated with what? With rabbits and eggs. And here we see the Christian church doing exactly the same here in the 21st century. So, before Israel entered the promised land, before Yahushua was born, the pagan world was already worshipped the resurrection of their sun god, and mother goddess was worshipped as the fertility goddess and would be known by many names over the course of history. Family, Easter is a pagan holiday, regardless if we have decided to change the reason why we acknowledge the date, even down to the name Easter. The funny thing is that churches today know this, but they carry on regardless. And instead of them digging deeper, they just decided to change the name to the Resurrection Sunday and make that solution. And it doesn't work. But that is far from the solution, family. Changing the name of a pagan god and a pagan festival does not change what is being worshipped. Nothing about Easter eggs are harmless. It's just as been marketed to us that way. It's been sold to us and we bought it line and sinker. If your church has been participating and currently participating with Easter eggs, you should question the leadership there of what is going on. Bunny is often associated with Easter eggs, but rabbits do not lay eggs, family. Yet people are hunting for rabbit eggs in the rabbit hunt. What is going on? And during these times, we as believers and followers of Yahushua should recognize the Passover and worship our Messiah as our Passover lamb. We get together and partake in eating his bread, which is his body, and drink of wine, which represent his blood shed for us when Passover. That's how we should be celebrating. It is not just about being historically accurate, it's about obedience and truth. Yah is seeking worshippers who worship him in spirit and in truth, as written in John 4:24. Yah is spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. If we truly love him, we must honor what he commanded, not what pagan cultures handed down through the Roman Catholic Church, the Western tradition. The scriptures gave us guidelines how to carry out the feast days. the Passover, and also the unleavened bread. Leviticus 23, verses 4 to 8. These are the feast of Yahweh, holy convocations, which you shall proclaim at their appointed times. On the 14th day of the first month at twilight is Yahweh's Passover. Very clear. And on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread to Yahweh. 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. On the first day you shall have a holy convocation. You shall not customary work on it, but you shall offer an offering made by fire to Yahweh for how long? 7 days. The seventh day shall be a holy convocation, and you shall do no customary work on it. It's like a Shabbat. Okay? The early church family did not celebrate Easter. They kept the feast of unleavened bread and Passover, as taught in Leviticus chapter 23. These are Yah's appointed times, not man made holidays, not pagan holidays. And then we have the eggs that are dyed, a pagan practice again. And you might be surprised to learn that dyed eggs, now a common symbol of Easter, were also part of ancient Babylonian mystery religions. In fact, historian Edward Davis records in the Mythology and Rites of the British Druids on page 2110 that Druids regarded the egg as a sacred emblem of their idolatrous order. Across ancient Egypt, however, and the Orient, eggs played a key role in various pagan religious rituals. And given this history, one might ask, why do those who profess belief in the Bible continue the practice of dyeing eggs at Easter? Is there any biblical command or example for such a custom in the scriptures? The answer is absolutely not. None. Zero. There is no such thing in the scriptures instructing us about Easter bunnies and Easter eggs and dyeing eggs. No. The New Testament have no mention of believers dyeing eggs. Our Messiah never observed Easter. He observed Passover, and neither did the apostles or the early believers practice these pagan celebrations. The practice, like many other Easter traditions, traces back not to scripture, but straight to pagan roots. So, you have a choice, family. Will you follow tradition or truth? Will you celebrate what the world calls holy, or return to the set apart days that Yah ordained himself? The real truth about Easter is this: it has nothing to do with the resurrection of the Messiah and everything to do with ancient idolatry. So, will you start afresh and celebrate Yah's feast days, Passover, or will you continue to celebrate the pagan, man made celebration to their pagan gods? The choice is yours. As it is written in 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 17, come out from among them and be separate, says Yah. Do not touch what is unclean, and I will receive you. Some of you will listen to this teaching and the word of Yah, yet you will continue as if you did not hear, because that is how strong the delusion is. Family, I encourage you to turn back to the truth. Celebrate the biblical feasts and walk in the light of Yah's truth, not in the shadow of Babylon. So please share this video, like and subscribe to the channel, and also hit the notification bell so you will know when each lesson is uploaded. And until next lesson, family, stay blessed. Shalom.